After U.S. missile strikes on Iran's main nuclear development facilities, Iran's foreign minister met with Vladimir Putin in Russia today. Meanwhile, President Trump told Bibi Netanyahu on Sunday that the U.S. is done with strikes unless Iran retaliates. Now is the time for peace. Trump and Putin are fighting to create it. The media says Trump has abandoned his anti-war base, that he's been captured by Netanyahu in Fox News, and that the all-powerful Israeli lobby now runs the White House. But is this even close to true? This is occurring against a much bigger strategic realignment which could defeat the modern British Empire. They need a new war to defeat both Putin and Trump. And the media is lying as usual. I'm Barbara Boyd, and I've learned that in a crisis like this, sober serenity, not leaping to conclusions, is the key to avoiding catastrophe. Right after 9/11, my friend Lyndon LaRouche counseled just this mindset. Here's the plan for the video. First, I'll show you two clips from Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary Marco Rubio's TV appearances on Sunday. Then I'll walk you through how this situation could get out of control and what's really at stake. Finally, we'll dig into the strategic setting, the ghosts of Anglo-American operations in this region, which still determine events, and the economic revolution Trump is trying to launch. On Sunday, Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary Marco Rubio went on national TV to explain the strikes. Their tone, calm. Their message, clear. Let's roll the clips.
What we've said to the Iranians is we do not want war with Iran. We actually want peace. But we want peace in the context of them not having a nuclear weapons program. And that's exactly what the president accomplished last night. I really think there are two big questions for the Iranians here. Are they going to attack American troops, or are they going to continue with their nuclear weapons program? And if they leave American troops out of it and they decide to give up their nuclear weapons program once and for all, then I think the president has been very clear. We can have a good relationship with the Iranians. We can have a peaceful situation in that region of the world. We have to step back a little bit, Kristen, and remind ourselves that we negotiated aggressively with the Iranians to try to find a peaceful settlement to this conflict. It was only when the president decided that the Iranians were not negotiating in good faith that he took this action. He didn't take it lightly, but I actually think it provides an opportunity to reset this relationship, reset these negotiations, and get us in a place where Iran can decide not to be a threat to its neighbors, not to be a threat to the United States. And if they're willing to do that, the United States is all ears.
The goal stated very clearly in a letter the president sent the supreme leader about 65, 67 days ago. And in a letter he said, you're not going to have a nuclear weapon. Let's negotiate peacefully a solution. We can make a really good deal that's good for Iran, good for America, good for the world. If you don't, however, then I'm going to have to deal with this differently. The Iranians didn't like the letter. They didn't respond to it. They ultimately entered into fake negotiations and tried to play him along. In essence, they thought they could do with President Trump what they've done with presidents in the past and get away with it. And they found out last night that they can't. And the world found out last night that you can't. And that's important, not just on this issue, but for so many other issues happening around the world. I think that what we are seeing is that this is a president that tells you what he's going to do, and then he does it. And I think that to a lot of people, including the Iranian regime, is shocking.
Now, compare that to the media's narrative that Trump is out of control, that he's been captured by Netanyahu, that he's abandoned his anti-war base, that he is attacking J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Tulsi Gabbard, and Pete Hegseth, who are against these strikes. The difference is night and day. What you're seeing here is Trump's real approach, measured, strategic, and focused on controlling escalation. He's not the reckless warmonger the media wants you to believe. In fact, the attempt to disorient Trump's political base is clear, with fights breaking out everywhere, online and off. This is what NATO calls cognitive warfare, and they've been waging it against Trump and his supporters since 2015. If you buy into the panic, you haven't learned much about Trump's journey to the White House, and your focus is way too narrow. The real story is much, much bigger. Let's zoom out. The globalist order is on the edge of a new financial collapse. The alliance Trump is forging with Putin is critical to surviving it. A new Mideast war is the British game in provoking that collapse. By surgically striking Iran's nuclear base, Trump removes Israel's excuse for a long war, while Israel itself takes out the major destabilizing force against it, Iran's terror capacity. The Middle East has been the British imperial instrument for wars and coups for centuries. Trump went to Saudi Arabia in May and outlined a plan for economic development by the sovereign nation states and national cultures of the Middle East. That plan is the road to peace and permanent stability. All of those who've been profiting from the region's endless wars panicked. They did the same thing around Trump's Abraham Accords. That's what I believe caused October 7th. This is where I intend to start my investigation of how this war erupted, and I'm sure I'll find the British hand. Recently, Trump and Putin have been discussing how to bring peace in the Middle East as a main discussion topic. That's why even before Saturday's strikes, Putin was telling the Iranians, make a deal with Trump or face the regime's destruction. This isn't about Trump being captured by Israel. If anything, it's about Trump and Putin controlling both Iran and Israel to prevent a wider war and destabilize the world economy. Journalist Barak Raviv has documented how Trump forced Netanyahu into the Abraham Accords by making himself more popular than Bibi in Israel itself, even though Bibi didn't want that peace. Controlling Iran means neutralizing its terror capacities and forcing a reckoning with reality, and that's where Putin is critical. I've looked at all the open source information. I think Trump is trying to construct a permanent peace here, including Israel's war in Gaza. Iran and Israel have been the main combatants in that horrible revenge warfare. While it's true that the Israel lobby has a major reach in the U.S. Central Command through General Kurilla and the CIA through John Radcliffe, and obviously in the U.S. Congress, Trump functions at a much higher level. His biggest problem is the brain-dead U.S. intelligence community, which refuses to understand the British ideologies which control their assumptions and the nature of recognizing the real enemy. Trump left the G7 in Canada on Monday because Turkey's President Erdogan was arranging a meeting between Iranian representatives and the Trump team in Turkey. But that peace initiative collapsed because Ayatollah Khamenei was unreachable due to the Israeli strikes. When Trump said he would give peace another 2 weeks, Israel did object violently, but it was already clear to Trump that the Iranians were simply trying to play him. That's the sequence of events we need to find out much more about. Now let's talk about how all of this could go wrong and what I might be misestimating. Anyone who tells you they know how this will turn out is blowing smoke. Axios reported Sunday that Trump told Netanyahu that the U.S. is done with strikes unless Iran retaliates against the U.S. bases in the area. It's time for peace. But if Iran decides to retaliate, it has multiple options. It has prepared for war with the United States for years. This is a population that lived through an 8-year war with Iraq without revolting. There are strong rally around the flag sentiments in this suffering and complex nation. Our troops in Iraq and in Syria are sitting ducks. They were left there because the military lied to Donald Trump in his first term about removing them. There is also a major debate about whether Iran's nuclear facilities were destroyed and about where the enriched uranium is. It has not been found. There is no doubt that our military performed terrifically and spectacularly. In previous rounds of conflict, Iran and the United States staged their attacks for minimum damage. Did that happen here? I don't know. Iran had more than adequate notice of the attack, and there were no civilian casualties. But nuclear bombs are made by human beings, not facilities. Iran could take its program dark, just like North Korea did. After all, when Gaddafi abandoned his nuclear program, he was promptly assassinated by the Anglo-Americans. If the British achieve their goal, we'll see mission creep around regime change. There will be a long attritional war that drains U.S. resources, creates further world instability, sets off a new migrant crisis, and evaporates Trump's political base ahead of the 2026 midterms. That is the nightmare scenario, but it's not what Donald Trump has in mind. I think he's acting to prevent exactly that and is trying to strike a grand bargain for overall peace in the Middle East, including an end to the fighting in Gaza. Removing the current main state sponsor of Hamas from financing them is critical to that goal. He has bet his presidency on accomplishing that. Now let's take a look at the strategic context. Lyndon LaRouche predicted 9/11 long before that attack. He forecast it because of the looming financial collapse signaled by the dot-com bubble bursting. Some event, like the Reichstag fire in Germany, would be used to impose authoritarian controls on the population in order to manage that collapse. That's the same kind of context in which this new war has erupted. Ever since the Sykes-Picot Treaty, the Middle East has been the cockpit of forever wars under British controls. Radical Islam and the revisionist Zionism practiced by Benjamin Netanyahu are ideal vessels for endless conflict. But Donald Trump is working on a total and radical reordering of the entire international trade and financial environment for the purpose of creating the new type of renaissance which can prevent this collapse. He wants to productively build our way out of the financial destruction of the last 50 years. The blogger Conservative Treehouse features Susan Kokinda's blockbuster Wednesday Promethean action briefing on his site. He agrees that a U.S. and Russian alliance is critical to Trump's plan. He writes, quote, if the USA, technology, innovation, consumer market, forms a strategic alliance with Russia, resources, capacity, consumer market, and then negotiates a reciprocal trade and manufacturing arrangement with China, the geopolitical world order is economically changed. Here at home, the USA is no longer a service-driven economy. A natural balance is restored. The multinationals will fight this hard. There are trillions at stake. So what's the real story? Right now, I think the limited Iran strike is just the military part of Trump's peace efforts. They are a dangerous but controlled move in a much larger game. The media's narrative is designed to confuse and divide, but the real story is about a fragile peace being constructed by Trump and Putin amid global financial turmoil. Russia understands the British hand in these events. So far, our intelligence agencies refuse to understand that. Remember, calm, sober analysis is our best defense against strategic mistakes. Don't let the media's panic and psyops cloud your judgment. Stay focused, stay informed, and keep watching as we hunt the truth together. Last week, we saw explosive growth as those of you who appreciate our analysis are obviously spreading the word. We had 2,000 signups over the course of the weekend and are almost to our goal of 1,000 paid members. I hope you see how critical our analysis is at this hugely important strategic moment. If you haven't already, go to the Promethean Action website and subscribe, and contribute financially as much as you can. Share this video and join the conversation in the comments. I'll be tracking every development, every twist, and every hidden player in this story in the meantime. Thanks for watching. Susan will be with you on Wednesday. I'll see you back here on Saturday.
Thanks for watching. Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.